I've been telling this story a lot lately. So if anyone's heard this before, I apologize. Because I realized I'm like, I have to start using different words because I'm going to sound like I'm repeating myself. But how it started, because you realize you use the same expressions to explain stuff. And I was laughing. So I'm like, someone who's following this is probably like, God, you gotta get a better vocabulary. So it started with,
Just change your story. Just throw a twist in
right,
there
just
every once in a
slightly,
while.
right?
Exactly.
Then I'm not going to be credible. We can't do this in this
Keep 'em
community, as we
guessing.
know from Travis Walton and Bob Lazar and
Yeah.
other people. If you do any change of your story, people are on it and they will call you out on it. And I love that. And that's the way
Yeah.
it should be, because we all have to be accountable for each other and ourselves,
Yeah.
especially when it comes to this subject, because you can forget things, but when it comes to certain facts and you're saying something's real, you have to be precise, and it has to be legit, and you can't change your story. Right. Obviously. Anyway, back to how
Well
it started.
said.
Right. How it got, how I started into it. Actually, I talked to my dad recently about this. So my story will change a little bit, because I told him, I'm like, Dad, I've been doing a lot of UFO podcasts, because he's the one who really got me into it, because he had a sighting when he was really young, or younger. I think he was in high school. I thought he was in like university kind of age, college age. But he was in high school, he said. So I asked him actually last weekend, and I was like, Dad, tell me the story again, because I feel like maybe I'm not getting it right, or I'm missing something, because I've told it and it's how I remember it. But this is a third part. This is a second person story, right? It's not my story that I'm telling. So he updated it for me. And so how it goes is that my dad was in high school, and they were driving up north to, they were going to this cottage. And at that time, they were on a highway, and it was a known highway, but I thought it was a more popular highway, but it wasn't actually. Apparently, it was just like and other people were on it. So it was a group of my dad's friends, and they got out of a car, and they saw an object, and it was in the sky. And my dad was obviously like, what is this? And all of them were looking at it. So they chased the UFO. This is the one thing I didn't know this. My dad updated me, and he's like, Chrissy, we chased it before we got out of the car. And I'm like, what? So they chased it for a little bit. There's also another part of this is really wild, to the story that I totally forgot about, or so he's told it a couple times to me, but I haven't talked to him in the past recent. Anyway, so they got out of the car, and they looked at it, and they flashed their lights at it, and it flashed back its own lights.
Oh, wow.
So I know. So they were like, my dad's like, we were communicating with this thing. And I said to him, how big was it? Because how it started for me, and I'll get to that, is he has a picture of it. They ended up taking a picture. He still has the picture. Hopefully no one tries to raid my parents' place for it, or looking for it. They have this picture, and I asked him, I'm like, how big was this craft, Dad? So when you look at the photo, you see this telephone pole. It's hovering. It looks like a sun. And I remember that clearly. And it's hovering above, like literally like a telephone pole, or a little bit higher. So they were really close to it. And I asked him, I'm like, how big was it? And he's like, it wasn't that big. You must have had to been like 4 feet or taller to get in this craft. So at that point, drones didn't exist, right? Like they weren't around at that time. So then what happened was my dad, I remember this part clearly, that him telling me, is he took out a rifle, and they did, and they weren't going to shoot at it, but they were trying to get a better look at it through the scope of the gun. And so when they directed the gun at it, it took off. And so that's when, they were like, what is this thing? Because it was intelligent. It knew what was happening. I know, it's unbelievable. And so at that point, then I thought that it was on major news. After that, it isn't. So if someone is following this story, I am going to tell the other part that my dad said that's correct. Is that so apparently I thought the news picked up that story, but they didn't. There was another similar sighting that happened on a town that was near to them, and other sightings kept happening that was similar to theirs, and that's what the news reported. And other people saw the mass sighting of something similar my dad did. So yeah, it was wild. So long story short, when I was like 6 or 7, he showed me that photo, and I remember like looking at it, and it was like, it's like I was enthralled like after that. And then always knowing these UFO stories, my dad telling them all the time, him becoming fascinated into it, meeting people as well. But he didn't really talk about it because of the ridicule was so bad. So now that, he talks about it more now because the vertical wasn't, but he would tell me when I was younger, like, don't talk about it. People think we're crazy. It's not.
And
Yeah.
what area was this in? Like what town did this occur
Yeah,
in?
that's a great. It was just, I believe it was Northern Ontario. So I'm not sure exact town he said, but it is Northern Ontario. My parents at that time, my dad lived in, I believe it was either Hanover or Kitchener at that time, but I think it was Hanover. So close to that area, which is still around Northern Ontario. Not too far north either, like a couple hours
No.
outside of Toronto.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
No.
not that far up north. But that whole region, like even I lived, I would say probably about midway through the province of Quebec, which compared to Ontario, it would be up north Ontario, and that was where one of I think our second sighting that we've ever had took place. So it's everywhere, even in like the remote parts of this country. This stuff is there. It's always flying around. It's just sometimes we're lucky we get to spot it, and sometimes
Yeah,
not so lucky. But
exactly.
did you ever have yourself? Did you ever have a sighting?
I've had something with my ex-boyfriend at a time, where I have talked about this. I don't really talk about it as much. It's not because of ridicule, it's because I'm still deciding on what happened.
Right.
I've had sightings I had one with him where he, like, we were in the backyard, and like I was laughed because now there's like backyard UFOs. But I was in the backyard with him, and it was during the day, and I looked up in the sky and I was like, what is that? And I'm like, is there such thing as a day comet? And he's like, Chrissy, and it was moving so slow, and it had this little trail in the back of it. And it wasn't very, like, the trail wasn't large, and it wasn't like it was coming from any type of craft, it looked like, but it had like a fireball at the end of it with this very tiny smoke trail. And it could have been something. It doesn't mean it was a UFO. I don't know. But I've seen other pictures of something similar of an unidentified flying objects, and I was like, that is something that is similar to what I've seen. So I pointed at him and I said, what is that? And he looked at it too. And we stared at it for a while. And then a craft, like one of those, a craft flew over his house. Not even a joke. It was an army plane, flew over and flew directly at it.
Oh,
And
oh.
then it came back on the same flight path right after. So it was going to look at what it was. No one else reported it from what I know in the media. They might have, and maybe we missed it, but it doesn't mean it was a UFO. I don't know. And to this day, I still don't know what it is. And it probably could be explained. Let's be honest. Most of the time they are, but
Yeah.
it doesn't matter. Sometimes if it's just the one that hasn't, it still means it's real.
But that's interesting that you
And
had that military plane fly over. That's a little
yeah,
detail
and to be
that's
honest, I don't expertise on military planes either. So I don't know if it could have just been, I don't know what type of plane it was, but it did fly back on the same path that it flew in on. And I believe that is a sign of a form of a military plane. And it wasn't it was a black plane. It wasn't a marked plane. That's for sure. It wasn't like some typical plane that you would see flying around. It was for sure some form of military plane. So yeah, those were times, and it's, even outside for him, it's so funny because he was never really into UFOs until we started dating. And now, now we're obviously not together anymore. Sharing my personal life here, but he, he loves it now. Like
yeah.
he's such a UFO guy now. And I haven't talked to him in a while. I wonder what he's thinking with all the new Pentagon information. He must be, freaking out just as much as I am.
I think there's going to be a whole bunch of people that are going to jump on the bandwagon like I knew the whole time. But there were people that
Yeah.
just like, not that long ago were like mocking people like us, right?
Oh,
But
totally. Oh,
who
it's
cares?
so
As
true.
long as it comes out, I don't care. I don't care. The ego I could put aside for 2 minutes as long as the information comes out. I'm willing to put up with anything.
Yeah.
As far as ufologist, and I use the term ufologist lightly because I mean there's no
Right.
really curriculum
Right.
to this.
Not
But
yet.
he's
So
not yet.
there will be one day a university class in
Exactly.
Harvard for
Yeah.
ufology 101. Yeah.
Welcome back to how to handle the little gray guys. All right, I'll be your professor.
Exactly.
Yeah. I can't wait to take that course. But
Exactly. We're
what
all
was
going to be teaching the course. What are you talking about?
yeah, well, be part of the
Yeah.
panel at least that like
Right.
agrees on what the
Right.
curriculum should be. Uh,
Exactly. Right. The
but
dean.
this
Yeah.
field used to be dominated by men, and we did have Linda Moulton Howe and Leslie
Yes.
Keene as some pioneer women in this field. What I think is really cool with the new generation is that a lot more women are getting involved in this and are
Yeah.
being a lot more vocal, which is about time. It's not just about little old gray men talking about UFOs anymore. It's actually a youthful generation. Uh, young and old now can actually talk about this because the lifespan's short, right? Like 85 years is short. And if you've seen something that was like, holy shit, and then somebody who's younger than you sees the same thing, you have something in common now, right? So
100%.
I think, what is your take on that with like, what's the uptake on the popularity with the younger generation when it comes down to ufology, or at least following up on the subject?
Yeah, from what I see, we look at, Gen Z to boomer generation, just even culturally, the the boomer generation is less still, and this is not everybody, right? I'm just kind of making a generalized statement, even though generalized statements aren't the best, but I from what I see and what I've heard, but everyone's different to their own. Mainly when we look at the boomer generation, there is a lot of distrust within government, and I don't blame them. Cold War, like like there's so many reasons why they don't believe the government, and there's a lot of distrust and ridicule around what happened and how they feel and speaking towards it. And then we have this younger generation that's coming out where their parents might know about UFOs or might not, but they're really interested in it, and mainstream media is guiding it. So they're hearing this more, and it's very fascinating to them because it's the first time that they've ever heard this, probably 2017. And they trust the government a little bit more. Maybe not all of them, but there is a little more trust in it, I see. And they're following what's happening. So they might not know everything that's happened, before 2017. They might only know from 2017 and Jeremy Corbell and upwards, and say Joe Rogan and Area 51 in the meme that went out. They might be following that, but that's how they ended up getting in. And I think that there is a lot of positivity around, when they use the word disclosure movements, there's a lot of optimistic conversations in the community that I see within the younger generation. That's really nice, and also wanting the truth and getting to the bottom of it, and using technology and using things like streaming and making podcasts and connecting with people. They're doing it more than probably ever. And same with the women, same thing too. It's a growing culture right now, and I will say that mainstream media and pop culture have a lot to do with that since 2017, and Leslie Kean and Ralph Blumenthal and all of them coming out with the New York Times piece.
Oh, that was brilliant. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And that changed things too in 2017 because it got a lot of guys that were in the military to come out, step forward as well.
Yeah.
Got people like me to be like, I should maybe, join MUFON and finally live my life's dream. That's pretty sad if that's my life's dream, to join MUFON. But you know what? I lived it. I completed it. All right. On to the next thing. Off to the
no judgment in that. And
no
no one in
judgment
our
in that.
community would ever judge you on that either. If anything,
Listen,
we're more than happy that we have more people.
set your goals attainable. Just
Yeah.
go ahead and reach them. That's really just keep it modest. But as I joined, that's what I found is sort of the distrust in the community at first. There's a lot of, oh, this guy's an idiot. Oh, no, don't listen to this guy. This guy's an idiot. I even had a gentleman on who said, he was attacked physically and verbally because of his take on what this
Yeah.
can all be, because he was more from a religious point of view, like they could be demons, which of course we cover because we want to cover all the aspects of this phenomenon. We don't know what it is, so let's hear him out. But some people don't want to hear him out. They just have already made up their minds that this is it. That no, they're interdimensional. No, they're extraterrestrials. No, you're both wrong. They're demons. It's like, we don't know. Why are we fighting each other? Like, it's stupid.
I agree.
Yeah.
Well, the whole thing about this too, that ufology is not a religion, right? It's a community of people that are looking for an answer towards a subject. But we do have this likeliness of a religion where we're all, I use the word fighting, but I don't even like using that, trying to find information and get information about something we don't we know that we're seeing right now that is real, but we don't know what the end cause is. And I've said that before too. We don't really know what it is. But that's the same thing with religion, though, when you look at it. Religion is the same way that there is, and I do not think that ufology is a religion. I don't think people should create one around it as well. But we see the same ethos of it happening. And I find that really interesting in the community. The one thing I love about the ufology community is that there is a lot of working together, and there is a lot of understanding, and there is respect, even though people don't always agree. But I do see the people that I talk to, and maybe it's the community that I'm usually integrated in because it's pretty vast around the world. But the people that I see and I know are really keen to help each other and want an answer and want the truth and want the truth to be real rather than, and not that they don't trust the government, but they're asking questions all the time and they're trying to work together and find solutions. And I'm seeing that now. I don't know if that happened earlier. Like, I wish I was in ufology, and I talked to friends that are ufologists that, been doing it for 40 years now, that I'm, on the podcast I'm on, the New Frontier Network. The guys in the group are a little bit older than I am, but I learned from them, and their take and understanding is very different than how I see the world as well, too, from perspective. But for them, I think that, they've been trying for so long, and they're in the understanding now too of collectively working together. But I'm not sure if the boomers in general want to do that, because there has been a lot of pushback. I've seen that in the past, but maybe moving forward now with a different generation, they'll start being a little bit more collaborative, I hope.
Do you think it was like because they had to struggle so much, in the 90s and even 2000s, that now it's like, no, I don't want to cooperate. Like, I fought this hard to be Rick Hope, God damn it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And
Yeah.
that's a big part too, getting the ego out of the way.
Yeah.
People have to realize if you start getting a star status, it doesn't mean anything. What you're trying to do is investigative journalism or investigative, whatever it might be. Sometimes money does change people. I agree. And how they look at this. And I don't know if I really believe in that. I think that obviously everyone needs to make a career and have to make money. And if they are doing it well in the ufology community, but I think that we have to be mindful in how we do that, and how then we treat people after people's, star statuses rise, and then the information that we're giving out.
Yeah.
I've heard a lot of negative stories, and, it is a little, hearsay and maybe a little bit of tea in the gossip, but I have heard, and I don't know anybody personally, but them getting to having something that's actually happened to them, and then they have a star status and they keep running with it, and they start making up stories then so that they can just keep it going. And that really scares me, because there's people that probably do that.
Well, yeah, the pass has a bunch of STEM Roman X in it, like that guy's full of crap. The papier mache heads peeking through the windows, people say, oh, they could float right through walls, and yet they can't do it at his house. They could only just peekaboo through the stairs or through the windows. Like,
exactly. You know who I'm talking about.
Yeah. So, but that's a problem. And at first, some people actually believed him, right? Like at first, he was credible because he did have some video footage that was credible. It's just that eventually they embezzle their stories a little bit more. Like they just embellish is the word I'm looking for, not embezzle. Yeah, you can't embezzle your own
They probably do embezzle stuff too, but
yeah, well, there's a sort of people that exactly. They sell their snake oil sellers, right? They sell a tell, and unfortunately, if you're tied to that, if you're an investigator that originally was investigating that, and you get sucked into somebody's delusion, that is problematic. And this community specifically, your reputation could be shot like that.
And good. I'm glad that the community holds people, accountable. I hope that people forgive each other,
hopefully,
and there's a state for that, right? We'll see. But I agree that if you are, lying or making up stories and deceiving the community that's trying to do something that they feel is good and positive and proper research, then I don't think you're welcome. I think it's just that simple too.
Yeah.
But it's really unfortunate that there are people, but we're not the only group. They're probably doing it in a counterculture. There's probably lots of countercultures that deal with that kind of stuff.
Well, it reminds me of Fight Club, when he gets addicted to going to like these self-help groups. And that's kind of what I see these people as. They're just trying to find somewhere to belong. And
Yeah.
They'll do anything, spin anything to belong to that group. And unfortunately, they're a dime a dozen. But now you're not hearing so much about these cases anymore. You hear more about like what's coming out in the newspapers, what's coming out, or seems to be rumored right now that something's supposed to be leaking either this weekend or next week or something like that. And that seems to be the hush behind the scenes. Everybody's, at least Jeremy Corbell is sort of leading
Saw
us.
that today.
Did you see that? Yeah.
Yeah, I did. I literally just saw it like
He's so
before
cryptic.
I jumped on here.
Yeah, he's so cryptic, right? Yeah.
He is. Jeremy is pretty. It is.
Yeah.
That's well, the funny thing too is we look at everybody in this community and how they like to tell their narrative. One thing Jeremy does do well, and I've interviewed Jeremy in the past as well for another podcast for All Pop Repeat, and he was one of our first interviews that I did, and he's very good at using pop culture and having that look so that it's attractive to a younger audience and to people that might not really understand ufology as someone in the community, or people that are been in the community for a while, but someone that's new, they might come through that as a conduit to be like, oh, what is this? And a lot of people, after they watched his documentary, tons of people called me and were like, Chrissy, what is going on? Like, I don't even know who Bob Lazar is. What is this? And I'm like, well, welcome down the rabbit hole. Like, here we open up. Let's start. And then that's the way that they get in, and then they start asking questions, and then they realize there's like a vault of info that they could forever now, won't even know all of it until probably the day they die. So it's like welcoming them in, be like, come on to this side of the ship. So I see that, and I see that's how Jeremy do it. Some people don't. Some people use the news outlets to do it. I prefer that in my way. And working with like legitimate news. And not saying Jer stuff is not legitimate in that, it's I'm just saying there's different ways of doing it. But I do like that faction of having it through a news organization and pushing it out, something like the Debrief. And that's why I work with them. I can work with them in my space because of what I do and what my skill set is in PR, but there's different ways. Stephen Greer uses, events and uses apps. I don't know how much I agree with Stephen Greer's take on things personally, but he does that way. Like there's tons of people that have their different way of getting their information out and making it and branding it around how they see the UFO narrative. And sometimes it's good, and sometimes I don't always agree with everything.
How would you, because you've been doing this for a while now, and you've been investigating it for a while, surrounded, immersed in it for a long time. How would you gauge like approaching the subject without falling prey to that, without getting the ego in the way? Like how do you approach it?
Yeah. Do you mean by somebody who's coming new or into the,
Just
or do you mean
somebody,
just
even
myself?
just anybody in like what do you do as a person to prevent yourself from getting that ego trip, or like saying no, I'm right about this, and
That's a good
not
point.
starting to rag on other people, right?
Yeah, my place in the community is I'm really interested in the cultural perspective of it and how mainstream media tells the narrative and what is going on within like the mainstream populace now, and then where we're going to be going in the future. And then using media and pop culture as that conduit to see how they spread the narrative, and then also how the Pentagon decides to tell the narrative along with their own community, and what does that mean, and where are we going to go in the future for it. So I'm really a collector. I like to collect, I like to observe, and then I'll make my personal decisions. I don't always share them because I don't always feel that what I say and what I care about, if who is right or wrong, does it really matter? It's just my opinion. So sometimes it's not needed, but it's to look at everything that we're doing as a collective and to see if we're going down the right road, and talking to people and seeing how we're shaping this narrative. um it's going to change. It's changed it. Someone called it, like a friend of mine, actually, Victor Vigiani, is a ufologist I was talking to earlier today, and he called it like the New Testament and the Old Testament. I laughed since
Oh,
2000,
good comparison.
2000, right? That's why I said
Yeah.
too. I was like, back to the biblical stuff in the UFO community, which again,
Yeah.
not a religion, but it refers to it because there are these conversations that people are like, well, let's forget about all the old information, and we're just going to start at 2017 and go forward. And I'm like, what? You can't do that. I'm like, that's not fair. You have to look at all the other information of these ufologists and everything that they've done and put it. And some of them are scientists. Not everyone's credible, but there are a lot of credible people in the industry that have done tons of good work, better than the people that are probably doing work now. So
Yeah.
we need to look at that. So yeah, so I think I just went off a tangent there, but
No, you
but
did
for
good.
but for mine, I don't really, how I sift through it is finding, listening to more stories. My narrative of what I believe has changed over time because I've learned more. So the more that you learn, the more that your opinion and what you know about the community and what you know about people's stories that are facts or fiction starts to grow, and then you can start creating, other narratives or understandings around that.
I like Jacques Vallée's book. I'm reading Confrontations right now, and you could see like he's humbled by some of the experiences that he's had, and he speaks from experience, and he keeps saying, for the UFO investigate, like he keeps giving these little tips. So I've been highlighting like crazy. My books are worth nothing. Like if I'm going to resell any of these things, they're highlighted and tabbed like crazy. They're worth nothing.
That's
Uh,
not true. That actually, I would, you know what? I would rather buy a book from somebody who does UFO research than just the book, because it would have all like, it's be like, oh, my work's almost done for me. Or I'd be like, what do I believe what they think? Or I think it would be, I love to see Stanton Friedman's books and,
yeah,
right.
yeah,
And what he's done. I think it would be wonderful to see what he highlighted and what he thought was important. I think it's
yeah.
the opposite. You
Or
should
wrote
keep them and
notes
give them to
on
your
and
kids.
stuff. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Well,
Yeah.
that's why I thought like I'm like, my collection, that's what I do. When I go through a book, I highlight it, and there's because I figured if ever I need to like put something together, a case, I have all my sections already pre-done for me, right?
Yeah.
Do my work ahead of time.
Yeah.
But I did love that from his book, because there's several times in his chapters he's saying, look, this is the approach. There's no data. There's no this. As much as I want to believe the story, there's lack of evidence, and therefore this is the classification. And his classification system was brilliant compared to what we had before,
Yeah.
because it does classify whether or not it's worth you actually going up to the site to do an investigation. I have not had the chance yet to go out on site to do an investigation. Nothing landed, no cows dead, which God, I want one so bad. It sounds so bad, right? Just want a cattle mutilated cattle, just once. I know Christopher O'Brien's like, no, you don't want that. They smell horrible. I'm like, yeah, I never thought about that. Like the smell,
Oh
you see it
yeah.
on TV. You're like, oh yeah, I'd love to see one of those with like, yeah, the smell would probably do me in, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, I haven't had the chance yet to go out on the field, but yet I haven't had really a case, of anything landing or anything nearby. Have you ever had a chance to go out in the field?
The only thing I've ever done in field work is when I started, I've always read more information and watched things about ufology and just talk to, and would go to conferences and meet people and ask questions, and really would just be an observer and a fly on the wall, and then like hang out with my dad where we geek out together about UFOs. I'd go visit my parents and we talk about it, until like
Uh,
midnight, and like I
It's
would
where the
show each other.
PR came from, right? Yeah.
Well, and I for sure, like that's a big part of it too. But it's funny where I would learn and get my information. So when I was at a conference, I met Patty Greer, and my dad actually did, and my dad introduced me to her. And not so much, I don't know how much I believe now in crop circles, because I'm learning so much more. But I went because I was like, this is the closest thing that I can get to the concept of a UFO and something maybe being real. So I went out and I flew out to London, England, and met a researcher. I'm like, Gary's gonna kill me. I just forgot Gary's last name. He's gonna kill me. Wow, Chrissy.
We'll
What
edit
happens
it.
after
When
a
you
long day
find out
with work?
later, we'll
Right,
just put it in.
exactly. So Gary,
Clark.
Clark.
Just insert.
I know Gary's gonna be like
Yeah.
Chrissy. He's like, you have him on the show, and he's gonna be like, what? So Gary and I ended up meeting Gary, and so I was just wanted to do circle chasing. That's what they called it. So I met Patty Greer, and Patty Greer directed me in towards a group of people that do circle chasing and a whole bunch of other activities. And they're like, do you want to go do other things? And I said, no, I just want to see a crop circle. Like, I just want to be in one and see it. So I ended up flying out to England, and I stayed in Bath Spa. I did an Airbnb with this wonderful family. And every day I'd meet up with Gary, and I would go out, and Jaime actually was there I actually met up with him and Gary that same time. He's the Mexican. I'm not sure if you met the journalist. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Jamie. So I ended up meeting up with them, and they were doing like their documentary and their research. So I was really just following them along, and learning and from their side, and then them documenting the crop circles. So we went to about, I believe, 4 crop circles
Oh, wow.
that trip. Yeah. And we
That
just,
many?
yeah, so they were ones that had been around. They weren't freshly made. They were new. This is the thing, like Gary was never like, "Hey Chrissy, these are extraterrestrials." He's like, "I don't know what makes this." Like he was still researching it as well. The one thing I'll say about crop circles, and I don't know how real they are in context, but they're beautiful. Like
Yeah.
it doesn't matter. The one thing I say to people, I'm like, it doesn't matter for crop circles. If it does matter in context, if it is, some form of extraterrestrial, for sure, we would love to know that. But in general, if it is human made, people should just go see them because they're like they're beautiful when it comes to art. Like they're
Yeah.
stunning. Like they're just a piece of work. And like the one I walked into one, I just, God, this is beautiful. Like, and people are like, "Did you feel different?" And I said, "No, I actually took a nap in one." Because we were doing so much work and I was up so early, and I took like a 10-minute nap in a circle, and I laughed, but I'm like, no, I'm like, I didn't feel any weird energy. There were other people were there documenting them. But they were stunning. Like they're
Yeah.
just beautiful pieces of artwork, if anything. But that was the closest I ended up getting into kind of going into fields. And now I hope that I get to do more outside of that. I know a lot of stories. I talked to tons of people in the community about it. And I've met tons of people in the community that are, before I really ended up getting in on this side even deeper, they were researchers that I would just end up becoming friends with and talking to and going for dinner with.
And the thing that's always fascinating me about the crop circles, you could tell when it's, the fake ones are usually a human made it. They look
Yeah.
nice, but they're nowhere near as intricate as the ones that just seem to be unexplainable. And some of people have actually gone through and like, oh, they're actually blueprints for, oh, I forgot what it's like. An engineer has gone through a couple of them anyways, and figured out that they're like almost pieces of technology, and he's
Mhm.
recreated them with metals and stuff like that. And I just love it. The geometry though, the complexity of it. I don't think it's a guy
Beautiful.
in the field. Like it would take you way much more than 8 hours to complete something like that. Like,
Yeah. Oh, now I remembered. Gary King. There you go, Gary. I'm sorry if you ever hear listen to
we'll insert
this. I
that.
love
Now
you,
just
Gary.
say King and we'll insert that later.
King. King. Gary
Yeah,
King.
we'll insert that. Yeah.
Right. So Gary, when we showed up in a crop circle, this one guy ended up walking, up to it as well. And I'm like, who's this guy, Gary? Because he waved to him and said hi. And he's like, oh, he's one of the debunkers, and he says he makes them. I'm like, really? So he came over and was like asking questions about when it was made and this and that. He didn't say that he claimed to make this one, but he's claimed to make other ones. And could be true. And you could see this again, part of the community, this kind of like, back and forth of like distrust or who's made, and like and this kind of struggle that was going along with it. It's really interesting to watch them and even interact with each other as someone, but they were actually really respectful to each other, which is
Right.
nice. They weren't rude. But you could
Professional
see that there
courtesy,
was,
right?
exactly, that's what it was. And but he was really interested, and I said it was funny because I go, if he knows that they're fake, then why is he coming? He's like, Chrissy, he's at them all the time. He comes to them every time there's a crop circle. He's like, I see them all the time, and he's always asking questions. And some he claims to make and some he doesn't. So you get a lot of that. And I think the UK version of this in the ufology community is probably a little bit different than what we get in the States. I don't know tons of people in the UK space. I know Gary well myself now, but outside of that, I don't know a ton of, not that it's researchers, but just tons of people that follow it as much. But I think there is a different narrative, obviously, when it comes to Nick Pope and, and things like that.
Yeah.
But I even asked the person I was living with for that time in an Airbnb. I asked her, I'm like, you know what crop circles, right? And she's like, yeah. I'm like, they're like 10 minutes from your house. And I'm like, have you ever been in one? And she's like, no, I don't know. I'm like, what? And so I ended up giving her like, told her, I know, that's what I
Yeah.
said. I'm like, you've been here your entire life and you've never seen one? And she's like, no, there was just, people are just saying kind of whatever it is, folklore, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, oh, and other people make them and stuff. And I said, well, I highly suggest. And I told her about it even more in depth. And she went, really? And I said, yeah. I'm like, just go check it out. So hopefully she's gone now to see it. But I think some people that I noticed, just even in their region, didn't really pay any attention to it. So
See, those are the people I fear for the most. The people that
yeah,
just like, I could care less about you until it's like right on the front door, and then they'll
yes.
panic, of course. Is there a crop circle that appeared or that appealed to you more than the others? One that maybe stood out more than the others?
The ones that I love, there's two. Though I didn't see these ones though. The ones that I saw they weren't basic, but they're not as intricate as the other ones. I don't know the date of this crop circle, but it was the one where it looked like a hallway and it was like three-dimensional. Even maybe it was unbelievable. Like the dimensions to it were just stunning. And then the other one where is I think it's there's like an ET face and then there's some type of binary code in a circle.
Oh,
They're
wow.
just
You were at that
yeah,
one?
No, I haven't seen them. I would
Okay.
love to. No,
Okay.
I've
I was
only
gonna say,
seen them
wow.
on
I've
can you
seen that
oh
one.
god, I would yeah,
Yeah.
I'd be screaming from the top of the hilltops if I was in that one running around with a drone trying to film it.
Yeah.
Um
Where's my metal detector?
exactly. Where is it? Gary, let's
Beep,
go.
beep, beep, beep. Yeah.
Exactly. But no, I've only seen those ones. The ones that I've been in were just like some general designs and they were beautiful too. There was basket weaving in one that I was in, which was really cool.
That's when
Yeah,
they.
and it was beautiful basket weaving, and it was like basket weaving in the entire thing, laid down perfectly, like flat. So whoever if someone did do the basket weaving, well done, because some of the best basket weaving I've seen with crops,
Yeah.
uh,
In the night.
in the
Right.
night,
Yeah.
exactly.
Like,
There's just and I know a lot of people don't believe in them, and that's fine. I don't know what it is personally, and the more I hear about crop circles, more I do question it. But besides of it, I do find it very interesting, and if anything, they're beautiful, man-made or not. They're stunning pieces of artwork.
well, I remember in the early 90s, there was that video that somebody had captured from England, which shows like two silver balls just flying really quickly above a field, and then you would see the formation form and then fly off. Now, this is early 90s.
Yeah, I think that's Patty Greer who got that footage from a farmer that ended
Yeah,
up giving it to her. And then Gary King has footage as well too of something similar. There's like a flash of light, and then when he looks down, there's like a crop circle right underneath it that ended up happening, and you can see it as like the daylight starts to come up in his video as well. But I think the
that's
one that you're
crazy.
speaking about, the two orbs, is Patty
Yeah.
Greer.
So that's like the only video that I've seen where it actually shows unidentified crafts and then something forming underneath them in the grass, right?
Yeah,
I know we can
that's correct.
reproduce it. I know that there's people out there that
For
have
sure.
really mastered it, but some of these designs are so intricate and so perfect that I have a hard time fathoming that somebody in the dark is capable of doing that in one sitting. That's just
Yeah.
it's
I know it blows your mind. It's the same.
oh
I know
yeah,
I'm the same way. And the funny thing is, like, how I kind of look at this is ufology now. As I start getting deeper and deeper and deeper into it, in my context, is I look at, obviously from our UFO footage that's come from the Navy, and anything like that to me is like extremely important, right? It's the most credible that we have, and then obviously not saying anyone else's isn't, but that's the most credible. And I look at that and I go, okay, it's not that I'm not going to obviously not look at history because it's most important, but this is important to us to have that we can say and hold it and be like, this is the most important evidence maybe that we have right now. Everything else I still listen to. I still listen to the ET stories. I still listen to the crop circle stories. I still listen to, other people's parts of mythology in the community, because I don't like to push off the idea that, oh, that's not real. And telling people, especially if they've had an encounter and there's been negative, I'm never going to tell somebody that their experience and it's been traumatic is wrong and that they're lying. Like, I don't think that's right. But I'm open to listen to it. It doesn't mean that I have to believe it, but I'm open to listen to it. And then maybe one day as our science gets better, we'll be able to confirm it. So when I look at it now, through the lens and even in a PR lens of what I'm allowed to talk about or what I should be able to talk about, right? When I say allowed, I mean by like what's the most credible thing to talk about
right.
is using stuff that's come from the government, that's been approved, through the Pentagon, other footage that is really credible sources from people that are experts and have been trained with a proper eye to identify different things if they're UFOs or not. Those are important staples that we can push the community forward with press and mainstream media. And then we can help to tell that narrative in mainstream, because it's the closest we're going to get to the best evidence we'll ever have. But it doesn't mean that you have to stop not listening to the other stories, because
Right.
one day maybe we'll have science that will catch up and be able to prove these other things. Some people are lying. Yes, it's just the way it is. Some people might not be, but our science isn't there yet to prove it. And maybe one day it will be. But I think it's okay to listen. You have to be mindful that not everything's true, and you can't go down the rabbit hole of super paranormal, because I think that can be really dangerous as well. It might confuse you of what you think is real and not.
Yeah, not to drink the Kool-Aid.
Too
Try,
much, or wear
yeah,
Nikes.
exactly. Just wear Nikes. I forgot about that. That's such
Heaven's
a morbid
Gate.
detail. Yeah, I totally
I
forgot about
know.
that.
Sorry.
The white Nikes. How did I forget that? Uh, yeah, I was gonna say for you guys too. When you do something, as you do as the debrief, it has to be backed up. Like you guys got to be able to back
Yes.
up. What you're saying. That's the problem. Is somebody is going to question you. Or the debunkers are still out there, so obviously you're still going to face that. But do you think the debrief is ever going to venture into other realms in ufology, or is it just going to stick to the military briefings for the time being?
That's a great question. Right now, I'm not sure we're going to stay where the course we are. It doesn't mean that we won't evolve. We probably will at one point. As the subject evolves, we evolve with it, and the more evidence we have and things that we can prove. I'm not an investigative journalist on this side. I'm public relations and a contributor. So my understanding of it is not as vast. It's as Tim and MJ and Micah's would be. They're like, I love the guys. The one thing I say about this, and this is not just to keep my job, it's to say is like these guys are like they're true investigative journalists. Like they do an amazing job of how they vet through their information, and I get to see it, and I'm really proud to be part of that, because I know that they're trying to get to a truth, and they're trying to do something that's not different, but they're trying to come, they're looking at ufology, and are looking at UFOs, I should say, in a serious light. Then, not that everybody else isn't, but they're using it and doing it in a different way, and trying to push it in a news format as well, where it's credible information. And the one thing that has been amazing to see this, and this is why I always say we have something special. The team is just brilliant, but outside of that, we are breaking stories. Like Tim and them are breaking stories about UAPs, and mainstream media is picking it up. Like, when does that happen?
Yeah,
That does
yeah,
not happen every day. When you get independent journalism telling stories to CNN and Fox, and people are listening and they're picking it up and crediting, the debrief back for that breaking news, it's unbelievable. And it's great. It's really amazing to play in that space and to learn from them as well, because the more every day that I'm with them, I learn something new about UFOs, and or stories that might be true or not, or things that they've learned than I would have ever learned before. So
right.
I feel very fortunate and lucky to be with them, to learn through them. Even though if they might not even realize they're teaching me, they are, and all of us in that point.
Well,
Yeah.
it becomes a reliable source of information, something that
Yeah.
you can depend on, right? The way news used to be. Uh, in this case, it falls
Yep.
under it's the way news should be, but with UAPs, which is why the debrief is so awesome. And I'm not just saying that because Tim is coming on tomorrow. I'm saying that because obviously you guys are doing a good job. The community is thankful for that, and I know that there's a lot of shitheads out there that write stupid comments and just like to poo poo on everything. And
Yeah.
it's no different for this podcast as it is for other podcasts or any writers out there. But those people aren't the ones that are actually doing what you guys are doing, right? You guys are actually willing to put yourselves on the front lines and say, hey, I'll cover this, no problem. And you're way ahead of the game personally. Like we still have, I think, Global and CTV here. They never cover anything, right? And you know what I'm talking about. You're
Seriously.
Canadian. Oh
Oh
yeah,
my God.
yeah.
They're
In
like
Toronto,
2 weeks old from like a story breaks. And I
behind
laughed.
everything.
Well,
Yes.
I laughed because I looked at, even though like when you're watching Global pick something up, it was like I watched Jeremy Corbell stuff, and their side broke those stories, but it took Global and the Canadian side 2 weeks, I think it was, to pick up a story, or it was a week and a half. And I just shook my head and I went, really, Canada? I'm like, and also, Canadian government, are we even going to start having a conversation about this correctly? Like, we haven't yet. And I'm like, and it's probably going to happen sooner than later, just because that's how Canada follows suit. No offense, I love my country, but we just suck at
Yeah.
this
A lot
narrative,
of stuff. Yeah.
and that's why we go to the States to do it, because we have more information. There's more people doing more work down there about it. And yeah, it's one of those things, and I look at the debrief, and I'm so proud of those guys from what they started, and just happy, yeah, to be part of it.
Do you know I contacted or emailed CSIS this
Oh,
week? I
really?
did. Now I'm panicking that they're like monitoring my house, but I just said, look, I host a podcast. Is there a Lua Elizondo version, the Canadian version, that we can speak to on this? Am I expecting CSIS to reply? No. I'm expecting them to have a van outside my house, probably. But it's worth asking, just in
It
case
is.
somebody's like, hey, you know what? Yeah, maybe let's have a discussion about it, right? We never hear anything on this side, or militaries never talks about it. They just released all the info not that long ago. I mean, several years ago, but
Yeah.
that's it. Nothing else.
Well, we have a commemorative loony too that has the Shanghai Harbor crash on
Our
it. Like,
money
come
knows
on.
more than our
I
military.
know, right?
How
And I
sad
laugh.
is that?
Well, and also I'm like, Canada, if you know more, just let it out. Like, start, because if you're just giving us like loonies with pictures on it of Shanghai Harbor, like, I great, but like, you can do better than that. I
That's
just
their,
laughed when it came out and nobody even really talked about it. And I'm like, I tried to get one because I was like freaking out. I was like, there's a like, and I guess there's two loonies that have depict. Yeah, I found that
oh,
out
the
too.
Manitoba one, right? Falcon Lake.
Yeah, I believe it's a Falcon Lake. I believe there's two. I thought that was Shang.
There's Shag Harbor, but the
Shark
other
Harbor,
incident
yeah.
was Falcon Lake, Manitoba, wasn't it? With
Right.
yeah.
I thought that, okay, maybe I'm confusing my loonies, but I know there's there's two images. Maybe they're both on there. Of the like, yeah, of a UFO crashing and or going into the water. That was the other thing someone said. I'm like, because they were like, oh, it's crashing the water. I'm like, how do you know it's not going into the water?
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, now that we know of, and someone just mind blew up, and I'm like, oh yeah. I'm like, I want that loony
They
though.
never
I will
found a
find
ship.
it.
Yeah, they never
Yeah,
found a ship. They searched
exactly.
high and low and they couldn't find anything. We know now that there's USOs right
Exactly.
underneath the water, so yeah, it makes total sense that that's what they witnessed. Just it going back to bed, I guess.
Yeah. I
But
hope that we have better images in the next little bit that comes out. If we're only getting anything in the 180 days, it's hopefully going to be,
I want a Tic
some
Tac on my
uh,
$50 bill, right? And I want a
exactly.
black triangle on 100. That's what I want. And then it's official in
Exactly.
Canada. They've officially come out. If our toonies already have UFOs, might as well have it on the other bills as well. So
Or is it Toonies? Maybe I'm wrong. I guess I'm
probably
butchering
toonies.
it.
Yeah,
Is it
probably.
Toonie? I thought it was
I
a
think it's a
loony it had on
toonie.
it.
Yeah,
Is it
toonie.
Toonie? Okay.
But I think they
Okay.
did too because like the two incidences, I think, or I might be mistaken here, but I thought that they made one for Shag and one for Falcon Lake as well. But
I
I
think
could
you're
be
right. Yeah.
mistaken.
No,
I
I
should
think
probably
you're
look
right because
into
I
maybe
remember
buying
reading
it.
too.
It's like 20
Right?
bucks for a toonie. Seems counterproductive, doesn't it? Like,
I tried.
yeah, did
I
you?
tried. Yeah, I couldn't get one.
Okay,
So I don't know how much they are now. They're probably on Amazon or eBay somewhere for a lot more, but I
like
do
two.
want one.
Yeah. Well, if you get your hands on one, it'll probably be circulated sometime, right? Get
Yeah.
lucky. I was going to say, with all that you got going on, because you're the owner of VOCAB Communications, you co-host Alt Pop Repeat, and you're also doing the stuff with the Debrief. How do you balance that with just being able to step back sometimes without it swarming? Because that's a lot of work,
Yeah.
especially in UFOs. I mean, you're not always talking UFOs, but it revolves around that. So how do you take a break? Do you just, take a month off? Do you just
I
ease
haven't
off
done
the
that yet.
subject? You haven't done that yet.
No. Because I've recently started with the debrief. I think, gosh, was it early February, I believe, or January? So
You're
it
not fed
hasn't
up
been.
of them yet. Okay,
No,
gotcha.
not yet.
No,
No,
not yet.
no, not yet.
It's usually 2 years in.
Are we on the next podcast? I'm like, oh God, no, no, just joking, right? Just joking. No, so it's first of all, I love the topic. So, and I love the debrief and I love the team in it because it's like in a way, it's a family and I get to talk to people about a subject I really like and enjoy and generally consume on my off time anyway. I got
Mhm.
to watch, I ended up watching, was able to watch TV. And I was like, when is that 60 Minutes piece coming out? I like messaged the group in our group chat because I was like, I finally get to watch some television. It's the go figure. It's like the one thing I want to watch. But I do. I try to consume as much. I'm hearing conversations. I'm seeing stuff that's going on in the media, so I'm consuming it consistently. So there is an interesting balance where you have to do. So most of the time is I treat the debrief like vocab. I, mix it in with my day. So I'm scheduling certain days for both or times. Breaking news happens. Sometimes I have to reshift my schedule. But I'm able to do it. I also have a team in vocab. I'm lucky I have 2 other people that work with me. So they're able to do other stuff when I'm taking care of clients as well. So it's really scheduling, understanding how to schedule. My life is scheduled to the hour sometimes.
Wow.
When it comes to like working out, like just editing, doing all of those things, spending time with my family, going to the dentist, like normal stuff. And it's hard because I don't have a massive team. Like obviously we have the team at the debrief, but of myself, it's me. So I know that working out and stuff like that and trying to eat healthy is important. And then also doing things that I know that I can't do. If I can't do it, I have to say and be reasonable to it myself, and sleep and and
Yeah.
and then along with like work, like usually when I'm done vocab, maybe during the day and I've done debrief stuff, then I work on alt pop repeat at night. And then usually within the other podcasts that I'm with, the New Frontier Network, thankfully I'm not doing any editing. We have Derek, who's amazing, who does our editing. So he does. So I'm just booking talent or interviews, experts to be on the podcast with them. And the guys are too. So at least I have more of a team of a group of us doing stuff. So
Right.
it's a balancing game, but I do enjoy it. Like I will take a vacation one day.
Yeah.
At some
Well,
point.
it sounds like you got a lot on the go. I personally like to stay in shape. Round is a shape, so I like to think I kept my shape. But the thing is, for me, is trying to detach myself from the UFO stuff
Yeah.
sometimes, and then spend time with the family, and detach myself from the podcast. Like, but I'm having a harder time. Like, it's just like I just want to take 2 weeks where I don't even think UFOs or UAPs, but this
It's a
isn't the
lot.
time to do it because everything's coming out
Exactly.
right on the
You know what?
cusp.
Somebody else said that to me, UFO Jane, because like some of the women, we obviously do talk to each other. And she sent me a note and she's like, I'm so busy working. She's like, but like, we're in the middle of so much information. She's like, and I'm
Yeah,
just trying to keep up with it, Chrissy. And I said, I know. I'm like, I feel you. And you can't really take a break. But at the same time, I miss it. Like I
yeah,
really, I spend a lot of my time in Clubhouse if I do have time, in like UFO groups. I spend my time, talking with the debrief guys. Like I really find myself in that community a lot. And even previously before the debrief, I was like going to take vacations to like go do UFO stuff. And my ex-boyfriend was like, where are you going? I was like, oh, I'm just gonna plan like, some UFO activity. And he's just like shakes his head.
come in
I'm
the
like,
woods. It's fine.
it's okay, and so I like it. Like I enjoy it, and it's part of my life. But it does become consuming a lot because there's a lot of information coming at us, and also understanding all of it too, and breaking it down, because sometimes when you look at things that are coming out of the Pentagon, not everything is easy. If you're just getting into this, you're like, what does this even mean? Like,
Yeah,
where are these other players comes, like who's Christopher Mellon, who's like who's Lou Elizondo? Like I can imagine people coming into this being like, what? And when you start talking, like I've had this with outside of people in the community, where someone, like for example, say you and I are having a conversation, just we were hanging out and chatting about it, people that don't know anything about UFOs, this is like Greek to them. They're like, who are you talking about intelligence? Who's this person that's here? Like, what's with the Pentagon? Like for them, it's blows their mind. And I
yeah,
watch that too, because they have no idea. And they're like, who are these key players? And I go, well, this is welcome to the community. Like this is what this is about. And it's a narrative that it's like a drama. It's a soap opera, a real life soap opera that we've been watching unfold with lots of key players, but it's real and it's like affecting the world. it's
yeah.
it's a wild topic. Like it really is.
Do you know what did it for my wife was the movie The Phenomenon that Jamie Foxx made?
Yeah.
That's the one that put the nail in the coffin for her to believe in this whole thing. And I was talking about it for years. Didn't matter. She sees the movie like an hour and a half long, and she's like, "What? How come nobody knows about this?" I'm like, "That's what we're trying to tell people."
But
Like,
I've been telling you for years now. Yeah.
exactly. Like, how
Yeah.
come when I say it, it doesn't? That's the thing about people. Like, if you meet a stranger and a stranger tells you something,
Yeah.
it's must be true. Why would the stranger be full of shit? Now they are because you could just Google it. I remember when I was a kid, like anybody could
Yeah.
say anything and you couldn't search it. somebody tells you that dolphin lays 900 eggs, you believe them. Like you couldn't search that up, right?
Yeah, it's
But
true.
the times are changing. So for yourself, do you have anything in the works right now? A new article maybe dropping soon?
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I'm going to Rebelliously Curious with Chrissy Newton is a show that I work, just like fun little clips, information videos that are coming out. I'm going to turn it into an interview style show now. So a whole different intro, everything else, different guests. So I'm really excited about that because I get to play in both sides on this, and that's the beauty of it is I get to do PR at the debrief and do what I love, and that's a passion that for me is for sure that doesn't go away. But then I also get to make content, and that's even another passion. So I get to do both, and it's about UFOs. Like it's like a win-win. I know,
That's
right?
the
It's like
subject
I
talks
know.
about itself. That's a win-win. So when is that starting? Or is that already
It's going to
started?
start. Not yet. Well, Rebelliously Curious with Chrissy Newton is already out, but the new show format will start in the next couple weeks.
Next
So
couple weeks.
I'm bringing guests. Yeah, I'm just bringing different guests on right now that I'm trying to book. So I'm
Nice.
excited about that.
Well, let us know when you drop your first episode. We'll post it on the Facebook group. Okay.
Thank you.
Make sure everybody's
Thank
there.
you. I
So
appreciate that.
I thank you so much for joining us today on UAP Studies. It was a blast talking to you. I was
Appreciate it.
mentioning to, I think it was Sev Talk that was on several episodes back, just how it's been very hard for me to get females to come on and talk about, their
Yeah.
investigations and stuff like that. And just that I want, more of everybody, more diversity, not just, white old men. She agreed. So it's nice to see the community to come together and be so inviting for everybody. Has nothing to do with religion or where you live
No.
on this planet. This is the subject that unifies us all. So I think that's the aspect that I like about it. That's a little bit different than religion, you
Yeah,
know?
I agree. And you know what? The first thing I was worried about coming into this, people are like, who is this chick? You know, like we've never seen you before. And I
Yeah.
was scared I was gonna get, and this it doesn't mean it's not gonna happen yet. I know that some people think that, and I should probably clarify for certain people that they think we work for the CIA at the debrief and all this kind of stuff. All these
It's
rumors are
the
starting to
name.
true. I know. and that and that we're part of like reptilians. And it's like, no, we're not, you know. So no, we're independent journalists. None of us are hired from the government to do any of this. We are doing it on our own. To clarify for some people that think that we're CIA agents, which is not true. But yeah, I'm like the whole thing about when I first started was that I was worried that people are going to be like, who is she? Like she just shows up and, and that hasn't been the case. And
Yeah.
I am thankful and I thank the community for being really welcoming to me and being wonderful. It doesn't mean that I'm not going to get, some people are going to make some negative comments, but so far it's been really nice. And the women and the men have been really embracive. And I also see that a lot of men in the community are championing a lot of women right
Yeah.
now. The Demi Lovato thing too that just came out,
It's huge.
which she's going to be right. And it's interesting because my first thought was instantly where I was like, oh, she doesn't know anything about UFOs. And then I thought, you know what? It's a start. It's a start. And it doesn't mean that, and who knows what she's going to do? She's going to do a
Yeah.
good job or not. But the point is that she might open the door for other women and within the UFO community to start having larger voices because she ended up putting a light on it and she's a woman.
Or even
Um,
stars, even like,
yep.
people in the entertainment side. What's
Yep.
Miley Cyrus had
Oh
a
yeah.
pretty holy shit
Yep.
UFO close encounter. So, just getting these people out, I think would be a start.
Yeah.
Get
And
them
I've seen a
vocal.
lot of yeah, and I've seen a lot of positive conversations on UFO Twitter about women being going forward, and then other women that need to be represented that have done amazing research, that have done lots of research compared to a lot of us that have other voices that need to be heard too. So
Yeah.
I'm really optimistic about more women and a lot of younger. Like look at Christina Gomez from our team. She's the smartest Gen Z I've ever met in my life. Like she's brilliant. Like she really
Yeah.
is brilliant. So we're gonna see. I hope we have more of her. And if she is the version of the next UFO generation that's coming up, we are fine.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm totally proud of everybody that's coming out. And I tell them every time somebody new comes out, I follow them right away. Just give them, the big thanks because I think it's awesome. And I think our communities are finally getting,
Yeah.
we're coming out, baby.
We're cool.
We're coming
We're
out.
cool.
The cool kids are here.
We are. It's great. And I laughed because I love it. I'm like, and I love that more people are jumping on the bandwagon. I think
Yeah.
it's again, like it's a counterculture that's turned into like a mainstream like a mainstream culture. Like give it another 10 years. Like it's UFOs are even going to be more mainstream than we've ever thought. It's going
But
to be
then
into the
watch the drop be something like horrific, like yes, they're here, and the plan is that they're gonna eat us. Ah, damn it! Like all these years of ufology just gone down the toilet. But I don't. Let's hope that's not the. Let's hope that's not the case.
Well, Nick Pope said something to me in an interview with the new Frontier Network, and he said that if they're the demonic or not, people in the government are still deciding that. And I was like, oh, it left me. I know, and I'm like, oh, we had to go down that road. I'm like, I know that we have,
Yeah.
we do have to look at what it is, but I'm hoping, going to stay on the optimistic side that it's good and that it's not going to be something bad.
Well, because
We'll
Lou,
see.
yeah, because Lou had mentioned that was a huge problem. That
Yeah.
the religious aspect, especially in politics, is like we don't talk about UFOs. It's only Jesus Christ. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but
Yeah.
there is something wrong if we're ignoring something that's like very real and we're not addressing it over beliefs and
Yeah.
just saying it makes me feel uncomfortable. It's an icky subject, right?
Yeah.
And I mentioned this before, but it's kind of like somebody who's abused trying to tell people, and people are like, oh, you're just crazy. But it's like, no, now
Yeah.
there's validity now, right? Like all those people speaking up for all those years
Yeah. Well,
finally
that's
have
what I say about abductions and everything else. I said we don't know. I know you want to close this podcast down soon.
No,
Jeez,
no, no,
right?
no.
Like, you're
I'm
making
just
me
making
talk,
sure I'm not
Jason.
wasting your time.
No, I'm enjoying it. I'm loving it. Loving it. This sorry, yeah, like abductions and stuff. Like, I try to stay away from that. Obviously, when we talk about reporting and stuff, because we don't have real legit evidence on it. But it doesn't mean that people that are going through these experiences, it's real to them.
Yeah.
And I think we have to have empathy as a community towards those people because it could be mental health. There is a lot of mental health issues in the community. We do know that.
Yeah.
We don't always talk about them, but they're there. And then with tons of other communities too, but we do have a lot in our own. And then outside of that is like looking at these people and saying, this is real to you. And it doesn't mean that it's actually happened or not. Sorry, my dog. It actually doesn't mean if it's happened or not. Okay, good. Doesn't mean if it's actually happened or not. But for you, it's real and it's trauma. And how can you find somebody that is going to relate to your trauma that's said that they've been abducted by aliens or whatever it may be? Like that would be petrifying. And so for that person, we have to give them a place to talk about it, a place to have somewhere to feel that they're included and wanted and understood, because even if it's real or not, they still deserve to have that. And our community has to give them that space to it, because when you neglect people from feeling like they're part of something or that they feel that their trauma hasn't been dealt with, you cause more problems.
Yeah.
You cause way more problems and you get angry people. And we don't need angry people in here. I think we just need to give an ear, be a little more understanding. And then if it's true or not, we'll find out at some point, because our science one day will point to it. And I'm really hopeful of that.
Yeah, and I did mention that to Tim last time, that if one thing is true, let's say you're saying, okay, well, these vehicles are from entities of another location. Okay, so that also gives validation to all these other claims, like the cattle mutilation seen with these crafts, and then you got abductions that are seen with these crafts. So that gives validation now to all those other things that people have been saying. It's not just that, yes, these crafts are flying around. It's like, yes, they are doing stuff to people, and there's nothing we can do about it.
That's scary too.
That's the scary part. I think that's the part that they're afraid to tell the public, because the public puts so much trust and security that, like I live in the United States, I shouldn't be abducted by aliens. I live right by a military base, but that is irrelevant. They'll come, and that's a part that I
they
think
can't protect us. And whoever wants to say as a government, again, don't work for the government, not a CIA agent, but I can imagine being that person that no one wants to come forward and say, oh, by the way, they exist and they're going to take you from your bedroom and there's nothing you can do about it, or we can do about it. And by the way, they've been doing it for years. Like no one, like
even our own guys get taken. Like the military get taken all the time.
That. Well, exactly. I don't think it's right. I don't think that, because it's scary, and I understand why they wouldn't come out and say that, because it will cause mass hysteria. It would. People would be petrified to go to sleep at night. It's like Freddy Krueger. You would not want to sleep. Like I wouldn't.
Every little noise, you're like, what's that?
I know exactly. Is it a gray? I don't know. You know,
Sleep with the
like,
gun.
God, it's just Steve. I know. Like, God, Steve. It's my neighbor Steve dressing up in a costume again to scare the crap out of me.
No, well, here's the
Yeah.
thing. That's what I'm worried about the most, is that if something like that comes out, and then you got people that are like, you're mentioning about your dad with the gun and the scope. Like,
Yep.
what if people are actually trying to take shots at these things now
Oh,
out of
probably.
fear, or saying, no, I'm going to capture one, or like, that is another thing that they're worried about, is like, okay, people actually not becoming a vigilante, but on the border of like,
Yep.
I'll be the first one to shoot one down. Man, the army can't even shoot them down. They probably successfully have done it probably once or twice, but they have a hard time. So
Yeah.
I know we'll see where this all goes. I'm looking forward to the June release. Are you expecting this to be like a holy shit thing, or are you expecting it
No.
to just be a mild, here's some new information, but
Yeah. I'm hoping
nothing?
for some better photos. Like the photos are
Yeah,
great, but I know they probably have better ones,
or
right?
video.
Like or video. Like we know they do. It's not like saying the debrief knows, but generally I think the people in the community are like, you obviously have more photos that you're not releasing
Yeah, yeah,
and slowly releasing to us. So we'd like more of those, and we'd like a clearer picture,
yeah.
or a video to see. Yeah, that's I think where we're going to go with that. They're probably going to ask for an extension. We've heard a lot of that in the conversation, but no, I'm not holding my breath at
Right.
all. I'm excited though that we're even at this point though. Like, just thankful that we're at this point, because I know like my dad and a lot of other people are just like, what is happening? Like, this is
Right.
unbelievable.
Your dad must be very proud of you, though.
I think so. I think my dad's like shocked, because he's like, what? Like, what? Like, I think he's I think he's a little confused and shocked.
Yeah.
And it's not that, because this is such a different, it's not that he doesn't understand this world. He's just not so public about it.
Right.
And he rather be quiet. Like, he'll tell his friends and talk about it with people that like UFOs, but he would never go out on a podcast and talk about it openly,
Right.
and share that. Like, I actually asked him at one time, I was at a conference in Discovery Channel. I think it was Discovery Channel. It was a larger outlet. They wanted him to come on, and they were like, does he have a story? And I said, Dad, do you want to tell it? And somebody will draw a rendering of what you talk about. And he was like, no, I don't want any public. I don't want anyone to know. I just, like, the story's fine. You can tell it, but I don't want I don't want them to know who I am. And I said, that's okay. That's fair. And
So many
I have
people,
respect
eh?
for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have respect for it. And it's not because he's scared of the ridicule anymore. He just doesn't want people to know who he is about it. He's happy to talk about it and fight in his own form of way of, for this topic, but he doesn't want to be public facing. And that's okay. There's tons of
Right.
people in every area for us. I'm just happy that he introduced me to it. And it's something that I'm very lucky to have with my father, that we get to hang out. He's my buddy. Besides being my dad, he's my UFO buddy.
Yeah.
And it's very special to me with him. So.
Oh, I hope my daughter grows up to be like you. That would be
It's so
awesome.
sweet.
That'd be
Honestly,
awesome.
Jason,
She
she
yeah,
will be. If
be into
you
UFOs. Yeah, who knows?
Yeah, and I wonder if I would be into UFOs if my dad was. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe I wouldn't be. But for me, it's always been real. That's the one thing I tell people too, is that some people are like, like they just learn about it, or they're like, did you ever think it's not real? And I said, no. I said, my entire life, UFOs have been real to me. They've
Yeah.
never not been real. So I don't know a world where the UFO narrative is not true. So it's not that it's hard for me to understand whether people's perspective, but I do look at that as something, because I am been a believer my entire life.
Yeah.
It's different than becoming a believer.
And the
Different way of
fact that
looking at it.
even if your dad did not become vocal about it, the fact that he was with you got you interested, you are now doing something about this phenomenon. You're a lot more active than anybody else. You're part of the debrief now. You got
Yeah.
podcasts on the go. So that is something that, even this podcast, like I said, I might suck at an investigator. You might go through my cases and go, it's horrible. This guy can't investigate. He's not.
I would not say that.
No, but I'm saying, like, even if I was, but if the podcast is able to motivate, somebody who can get out there and will actually do something really good, then I feel like I've contributed somehow, just to get somebody off the couch to sort of just join the gang, right? And that really was.
And I feel there's a place.
Yeah. I think for everybody. Yeah. It's a big world, and they're everywhere. So.
Oh yeah, and everyone has a place in certain communities, and I'm just thankful that the UFO community has been mine. They've been really wonderful to me. And I said to my dad, we went to the first conference, I was like, Dad, these are our people. He started laughing. And I was
Our
like, I
people,
feel like
yeah.
I'm at home. Like I just laughed because I was like, I feel right at home. I'm like, and I'm fortunate because some people I think look for other communities that they want to, have friendships in and learn and involve together and do things. And I think I'm very happy that I've got them in this community and with some really amazing people that I get along with and will hopefully be friends with the rest of my life if I'm researching or not, or working with the debrief or not. So I don't think this is ever, if anything, it's just going to be probably, it's going to consume my life more.